Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for September 15th, 2025. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. Byers?
Here.
Mr. Roberge?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic and one nation under God, indivisible, and justice for all. We have two public commenters tonight. Just to briefly go over the rules, when you come forward, we'd ask you to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes for public comment. And our first commenter is Mike Kerber. So any of the chairs up here, the mics are all live, whichever one.
Can you hear me okay? Because I never know how loud I'm talking. Thanks to 8 months in the artillery in Vietnam. Normal's a great place to live. I've lived in 8 other towns and cities, and this is by far the best one I've ever lived in. I'm glad I got to retire here. I do a lot of walking on the trail and sidewalks, and so if you have some concerns about increasing the number of dogs a person can have. As a child, I was attacked by a dog, and my dad pulled the dog off me and saved me. And I've been attacked on the trail several times. Most dog owners are pretty good. They curb their dogs, and if you're walking or riding a bike, they keep control of their dog, but some don't. In fact, when I've asked one person about curbing a dog, he's just said, the F word, you. And with 2 dogs on leashes, it gets to be more of a challenge for the owner to kind of keep them together. And, sometimes when something like that happens, or 2 dogs on long leashes, I'll get off the trail or the sidewalk. And I can imagine what it would be like if the owner had 3 dogs on leashes. And I think it'd make it tough for those of us that walk and ride a lot. So I'd urge you to please keep the 2-dog limit, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Our next speaker is Ann Tabor.
Hi, I'm Ann Tabor, and I am a resident of Normal. This summer, I emailed the town council asking to make the number of dogs for normal 3 instead of 2. Some reasons this can benefit the community are dog companionship. Dogs teach each other, play with each other, and less separation anxiety for the dogs when their owners leave. And then this would make us equal to the number of dogs per Bloomington. Bloomington. This can teach children more responsibilities and help them learn to be more responsible when they're an adult. And then there's also less dogs in kill shelters and shelters around the world, and more dogs in their forever homes. All of these are important for our community and our 4-legged friends. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts and ideas.
Thank you. We move to the omnibus agenda. Items considered routine and would be taken with 1 vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion.
I just asked to be excused from voting on any bills I incurred in this packet on during my duties as a council member.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz?
I would like to pull item E as an echo.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Items considered under omnibus tonight are approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 2nd, 2025. A report to receive and file town of normal expenditures for payment as of September 10th, 2025. A resolution to accept bids and award a contract to R.W. Vandegraff Painting and Decorating for the Anderson Pool Bathhouse Quartz Floor Restoration Project in the amount of $83,128. A resolution waiving the formal bid process, awarding a contract for the purchase and installation of PVC pool membranes at the Anderson Aquatic Center, and that's to Reno Sis, for the total cost of $106,794, and approving an associated budget adjustment. A resolution waiving the formal bidding process and approving the acquisition of 3 Ford F-150s from Sam Lehman Ford for a total cost of $116,988.10. A resolution waiving the formal bidding process and approving the acquisition of furniture from Widmer Interiors in the amount of $68,504.63 through the Omnia Joint Purchasing Program. And a resolution to award a contract to Autobahn Company Incorporated for the repair and preventive maintenance of Uptown Station Garage Project in the amount of $155,010.
Move for approval.
We already have that.
Oh.
Please call the roll.
Beat him for once.
Mr. Preston,
Didn't work.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, those items are approved. Item E is a resolution certifying and acknowledging the town's support of the OSLAD grant application for Rosa Parks Commons project. Ms. Lorenz?
Move approval, please.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz?
Yeah, I wanted to bring this one up for a little more discussion to fully understand what we're asking for here. So, is this an accurate depiction that we're planning ahead for about $200,000 of expenses to replace the park shelter and playground, both of which are probably certainly needing replacement, as we like to do on a regular cadence. So the new piece is to do that, but a lot more, to the tune of around $1 million, for which this particular piece is asking for us to approve the submission of a grant to OSLAD, O-S-L-A-D, stands for something, whereby the grant could cover up to $600,000, and we would be then responsible for $400,000. Is that an accurate depiction?
Yes, I believe that's pretty close. I think the dollar amount might be 425,000. Yes.
Okay.
And if I could
Sure.
add a little bit more, in
Mhm.
terms of the concept plan or the master plan for Rosa Parks Commons, depicted on page E9, it does include a restroom facility, which would certainly be new. I don't recall if you mentioned that. And then trail, kind of a workout area, and as you mentioned, replacement of playground, which is very important.
Okay. So if we do not get this grant, then do we revert back to the original 200,000 kind of base option, or do we still move forward with this $1 million project?
Well, we wouldn't have funding to move forward without a grant. So I would have to defer to Mr. Damry.
Let me ask it in a different way. Would we do at least the $200,000?
I believe the 200,000 that's budgeted is for playground replacement, and that needs to happen. So yes, we would move forward with replacing playground. Is that correct, Mr. Damry? Yes.
Okay. So the increase, what concerns me is, I had another question. Is the shelter being expanded in size?
Mr. Damry, you want to come forward?
Because I'm looking at what basically drives this up another 600. $1,000 or half a
Right.
million dollars.
Right. Restroom, shelter replacement, and then if we do a fitness
Fitness,
court area.
Yeah, so the fitness equipment, the fitness equipment area would be part of that expansion. The restroom is part of that, but also the sort of the redevelopment of the grounds a little bit, the layout, which was kind of the overall goal. If we do not get the grant, we would proceed with the playground replacement and the shelter replacement, probably fitting into this master plan overall, but probably a little bit less excavation and earthwork and sidewalk work. But we would still have everything connected back to the parking lot. So,
And where would we if we get the grant, do we have to do all of those things? Would it be like, yes, you have to do the fitness equipment, yes, you have to do the restroom? I mean, it's pretty
Yes.
prescriptive.
yes, because each one of those items is kind of going into a score sheet almost of helping to qualify us for that grant,
Okay.
making us eligible.
So
for it.
it's not been too many years ago that we voted up and then I think voted down a fitness equipment plan for this same space.
Mhm.
Why are we bringing it back?
It wasn't voted down, it was withdrawn.
Okay.
So it would be part of a continued conversation about use of that space and need. We have, actually, if we do move forward with this, we'll come back and talk further about that and whether or not there would be grants or sponsorships for something like that, if that continues to be in the plan. And based on what other communities in downstate Illinois have done.
Yeah, and that is also something that was identified in our master plan originally several years ago. Our plan is ready to be updated here soon, but it was identified in that plan in 2016. So that's kind of why it came up in the first place and why it's also came back up on this site, which this site offers a lot of great, a great asset on that site because of the fact that it's adjacent to the Constitution Trail. It's a trailhead, a lot of opportunity to run to the area and, do a workout and then run home, whatever the case is. So I think it's a great spot for that.
Yeah. Do we have the additional $225,000? Should we be on the hook then for 4.25?
We can't identify the source at the moment. We would work between now, if this moves forward, we would work between now and spring on lining up funding.
Yep.
We have great parks. I don't want to, not be a supporter of parks. This just seems a bit excessive. And if we don't have an identified source of revenue, I'm not real comfortable moving forward with a grant. So, thank you.
Further on this item?
When I raised the question of how many other areas convenient to the trail have restroom facilities, to our knowledge, it is just the one at the Connie Link Amphitheater, which is actually somewhat removed from right adjacent to the trail. So this would add another convenient feature on a convenient spot next to the trail, or for anyone who might be traveling on that heavily traveled Rab Road to utilize. So that is an improvement to the park that we don't have now.
Refresh my memory, Mr. Damery. I think when we brought this up once before, there was conversations about other communities have done this fitness center and found private sponsors to help
Yes.
pay for this.
Yeah, it's only grown since then. I'm not sure of the exact number, but I think back then, we were looking at similar projects around the state, and there were like 6 or so. Now there's probably close to 30 to 35, somewhere in there. And they've all been done in the past 4 years, and several have been done through an OSLAG grant as well. So, yeah, it's been a popular amenity to add to parks. And and like I said, just enhances that trailhead even more with the restroom, the fitness component, the adjacency to the trail. It just makes sense to me.
If I could jump in with a little bit more explanation, what we're all referring to is the National Fitness Court. Is that what it's National?
Yeah.
Fitness Court?
National Fitness.
Right.
Court.
We don't have an agreement with them at the moment, but this is the concept for this type of use at County Link wrong park. Rosa Parks Commons, I'm sorry. This would be the type of use we think would fit well, since it is a trailhead site, has parking, good access, and the demographics of the area, I think, are what set us up well for an OSLAD grant. OSLAD stands for Open Space, Land
Acquisition and Development.
Open Space, Land Acquisition and Development.
Yeah.
So it's a state grant program.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thanks, Mayor. So in all those comments, I think I heard that the only thing we're committing to tonight is applying for a grant. We're not committed to any of the other things, other than we've identified that the playground and the shelter are 20-plus years old and need to be replaced. So whether we apply for this or not, we need to spend the money to replace the playground and the
By OSLAD standards, we have, the only amenity that we really have at that park right now is a parking lot
because
and a connection to a trail.
because of the age. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this doesn't obligate us. If we don't get it and we decide to move forward with the grander plan, then you guys would have to come back to us again and identify. So I'm very supportive, obviously, if we can go out and have a shot at bringing over $500,000 of our tax dollars back to our own community to do good for our infrastructure and our park system. And we're going to be on the hook regardless of the outcome of this grant to do the playground and the shelter, then there's really no risk here for us that I can see. So I'm very supportive. Thanks.
Further discussion? Ms. Lorenz?
If I may rebut, there is risk. There's risk that we would pay $225,000 more because we would be on the hook for $4.25 instead of $200,000. I would fully support the replacement of what we've budgeted for the shelter and the playground. I think that is warranted for sure. And bringing that up to more modern standards and safety. But I think we've got some other bigger bills facing us. And unfortunately, without designated revenue assigned to this, I think there is an amount of risk associated with moving forward. Because what if we do get it? Now we're on the hook for $4.25. So, just to clarify my point.
Mr. McCarthy?
Not to encourage a back and forth here, but again, we're applying if we get 600 and it costs us 200. I think that's a tremendous value to our community. I want to make sure that everybody's keeping track of the back and forth here, and what this really means is the additional commitment here is only if we bring an additional 600,000. So just so everybody's clear, there's no confusion about what's happening here. And so we're gonna replace some equipment at the cost of 200. So that's already assigned cost effectively in our budget. And so an additional funding, if we get this grant, means that the administration will have to come back to us and say, this is where that's coming from. And good news, we brought 600,000 of our tax dollars back to help us do infrastructure. So either way, it's a great value for, as I see it, everybody will vote. But as I see it, it's a great value for our taxpayers.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
No.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That item is approved. We move to general orders. The first on general orders is a resolution approving a site plan for Calvary Acres at 1212 North School.
Move approval.
Thank you. You got the second that time. Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That resolution is approved. Item 8 is an ordinance rezoning property in the town of Normal at 2219 West College Avenue.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That ordinance is approved. Item 9 is a presentation by Anthony Cervini, Principal at Sikich LLP, on the town's annual financial statements and audit report.
I wasn't really going to do much of an introduction.
Okay,
I'll let you do that,
fair
Mr.
enough.
Hand. Thanks.
Sure thing. Thank you. Tonight before you are several reports, primarily the audit report. As a best practice for the profession, the auditor himself has to present this information to the council. So I'm happy to introduce Anthony Cervini from Sikich Audit Firm to prepare the report and present to the council.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for the opportunity to be here this evening, present the results of our audit of the town as of and for your fiscal year ended March 31st, 2025. As noted here, we did issue several reports at the conclusion of our audit, 10 reports in total that were issued. The annual comprehensive financial report being the largest of those documents there. It's about a 214-page document there, so I will highlight a few items for you from that, but happy to answer any questions on that. I'll also cover a few items for you on what we call the single audit report. Talk more about that in just a few moments here. We also issue reports on the town's tax increment financing or TIF districts. Those are examination reports. Pleased to note that we've issued unmodified examination opinions on all of the TIF compliance reports there. Single audit report covers the town's federal spending for the year. I'll highlight a few additional items on that momentarily. A couple other reports that are issued as part of the audit process: the Consolidated Year-End Financial Report, or the CIFR as it's referred to. This is a state of Illinois requirement based on the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act, or GATA as it's known. And then finally, our management letter and board communication reports there. I'm pleased to report to the council that we have issued those documents. We identified no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies from an audit standpoint in terms of the town's processes or internal controls. So again, very solid internal control system in place here. But covering a few items for you within the annual comprehensive financial report. First, just want to commend the town and staff and the council for the preparation of an annual comprehensive financial report. This is a document that the town voluntarily prepares. There are certain required components under state law in accordance with your bond statements and official statements there, but the annual comprehensive financial report goes above and beyond those minimum reporting requirements there. You prepare this in the spirit of accountability and transparency to your taxpayers, your constituents, and any others that may have an interest in the town's financial position or changes in financial position. Within that document, there's 3 sections, the first of which is the introductory section. A few items to note within that section will be the letter of transmittal. This is prepared by the town staff. Transmittal letter, I always note this as a somewhat unique component within an annual comprehensive financial report. This is really the only chance that management has to discuss not only certain things that occurred during the year, key initiatives there, but it also gives the chance to look forward as well and what some of those key initiatives are on a go-forward basis as well. Also within the introductory section is the Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFOA, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So the town has received this award for its March 31st, 2024 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Goes through various levels of review with both the GFOA technical staff as well as members of GFOA Special Review Committee, ensuring that all of the required components of that annual comprehensive financial report have been met. So again, just commend you for receipt of the Certificate of Achievement. Within the financial section of the report, the first component is the Independent Auditor's Report. Pleased to report to the council that we've issued a clean, unmodified opinion on the town's financial statements, again, as of and for your fiscal year ended March 31st, 2025. As a reminder, that clean, unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as auditors, and it means the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, in our opinion, based on that audit. Town is subject to 2 different sets of auditing standards that we have to follow during the course of that audit. generally accepted auditing standards, and then what's also referred to as generally accepted government auditing standards, the latter of which is required both by now state law under the GATA reporting that I talked about earlier, as well as based on the town's federal expenditures during fiscal year 2025. A couple other items of note in the report there. You did have two restatements this year. Restatements did change in terms of GASB Statement 100 of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and how those are reported. The first was now referred to and is required to be reported as what we call an error correction there. But this is, we're limited in terms of the terminology we can use here. This is really more of the town aligning its reporting of investment and interest income with amounts that were reported to the Treasury for the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA there, so nothing of concern. Normally when we have an error correction, if it's material there, which this amount also wasn't really a material amount either, about $78,000 there, that would generate a material weakness or significant deficiency. Again, as I noted earlier, we did not believe this classified as either of those levels of comment there. So again, more just of a cleanup entry there. You also had a change in accounting principle reported this year. Statement 101 from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board related to how the town reports its accrued vacation, accrued sick, and accrued time off for employees for that. Required staff to go through and kind of reassess how those amounts were calculated in accordance with the standard. So you'll see both of those in the restatement section of the statement of activities in the front of the report, as well as additional information in the note disclosures for that. That separate report I noted in accordance with generally accepted government auditing standards. Again, here noting there was no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies and no instances of non-compliance related to the federal grant testing. Overall, from a financial highlight standpoint, encourage you to look at the management's discussion and analysis, which immediately follows the independent auditor's reports. That management's discussion and analysis, or MD&A as it's referred to. This is the executive summary here. So as I mentioned, you have a 214-page document. If you're talking to someone or if you're looking for the Cliff Notes version of that and pointing them to high-level overview of that information, MD&As are a great place to direct them. Also includes management's explanations for why figures have changed from one year to the next. So not only giving you the data side of it, but giving you some context in terms of those figures as well. Overall, from a statement of net position standpoint, in your basic financial statements, your governmental activities, so this is your general fund and your tax-supported funds, general fund, or governmental activities, reported an unrestricted deficit balance as of March 31st, about $47.2 million. Now, you hear that amount and you know, may raise some questions in terms of that. Really, the majority of that balance and then some can go to the pension standards and the other post-employment benefit, or OPEB standards, that the town is required to report under there. Those amounts, so pension and OPEB amounts, this relates to the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, the police and firefighters pension, as well as your other post-employment benefit. Those equate to about $101 million that factor into that. So if you take that out, which is, prior reporting did not include those there, significant impact there. The biggest advice that I give in terms of councils on this, you're getting the actuarial valuations for that on an annual basis for that. They're continuing to contribute the actuarially determined contributions really is the best you can do in terms of that. Obviously, you're subject to other considerations, whether that be market considerations, actuarial assumptions, things of that nature there. But overall, that's why you have that position reported on your governmental activities. Business type activities includes your water, your sewer, and your stormwater. Have a positive $17.7 million unrestricted net position there. It was a great year overall for the city in terms of net position, $17.5 million increase for governmental activities, $3.4 million for business type activities. The majority of that driven by the fact that in 2025, your capital asset additions, or your increases to your capital assets, infrastructure, other items of that nature really outpaced the depreciation expense on those existing assets in fiscal 25. From a fund balance standpoint, the general fund, the main operating fund of the town, reported a healthy reserve as of March 31st. You had about 58% in reserves of your 2025 expenditures there. Overall fund balances did decrease about $1.9 million. Again, not anything of major concern there. Some planned spend down in terms of that as well. Again, your enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, all on solid footing as of March 31st, 25. I mentioned the pension funds just in terms of the status of those. I always like to just highlight the funded status there. IMRF, as of their most recent year-end available, town was about 90% funded from an IMRF standpoint there. Very solid for a defined benefit pension plan, 90% there. Again, IMRF, a little bit unique in terms of its funded status, certainly the gold standard, if you will, here in Illinois of funding for that there. A variety of reasons for that. Police and fire, police was up about 1.5% to 55% funded, and about 59% for fire, which was a flat, kind of flat number from 24 to 25 there. Just a few other notes that I have, just wanted to share for you on the single audit report. This is the spending related to federal dollars here. Town spent about $9.9 million of federal funds in fiscal 25. $6.8 million related to American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funding, and ARPA spending there, about 68% of it. You also had the National Infrastructure Investment Grant through the Department of Transportation that was then passed through IDOT. That was $2.1 million. Combined, we tested those two as major programs based on the federal program requirements for that, accounted for about 89.5% of those federal expenditures being tested as part of the single audit. Just for context, the threshold for the town as a low-risk auditee is required to be test 20%. So coverage greatly exceeded those minimum reporting requirements there. And again, no findings, no question cost, no issues, or instances of non-compliance noted there. With that, that concludes my comments. I'd just like to thank, again, Council for the opportunity to be here this evening. Thank Andrew and his team for a job well done. Particularly just want to call out and spotlight the great work that Felicia does in terms of coordinating and facilitating the audit for us. Been in this field for 20 plus years. Responsiveness and making sure that things are done right is never an issue in terms of those discussions on that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
First of all, I thank you for this report, and congratulations to the Finance Department for yet another award. So I'm very happy to see that. For you, sir, in your conducting the audit, did you make any use of AI?
So we have certain tools that we utilize during the course of our audit there that are actually built in to our audit software for that. However, the AI approaches when it comes to audit testing are many of them are still in a developmental phase for that. So we're continuing as a firm to explore what is going to work best and be able to do that. I would say generally our approach tends to be a more substantive approach in terms of that. So not only looking at kind of the analytical pieces, which AI would generate some of those exceptions for us or things to look at as part of that process there. But then we take that step further to actually look at the detail underlying those transactions, whether those be journal entries, invoices, cash receipts there. I think that will continue to evolve in terms of that, and that's something that we've committed to identifying what works best for that as well. I would say the other thing that we've seen in terms of that from an analytical standpoint is a lot of the tools that we see in the audit space are developed first for commercial organizations, commercial companies, and looking at that data there. And then oftentimes, as we see with government, is kind of there's a lag for that there. So making sure that whatever tool we utilize for that, that we're incorporating a tool that appropriately is considering some of the nuances to the GASB's rules and the governmental accounting rules.
So to paraphrase, since AI application in accounting is still in the pioneer phase, there is still human involvement.
Absolutely.
To actually verify and ascertain that the information it's getting you is worth pursuing.
Correct.
And how much have you been looking at cybersecurity in terms of your test of internal controls? Is it becoming an increasing concern in that realm of internal controls?
So we do look at certain components of the cybersecurity factors into that. So from a financial statement audit, certainly we're not getting into the level of depth that a systems audit or IT audit would involve for that there. So we look at certain components such as user access listings to the town's accounting software for that. They're looking at transaction approvals from a walkthrough standpoint, ensuring that the policies and procedures that are in place are not only designed in an effective manner for that, but we're also able to ensure that those controls are actually been placed in operation for that based on our testing for that. I would say I would expect a continued trend to be asking more questions. So we ask regarding any breaches or things of that nature and inquire, the town staff as part of that process as well. So I would expect to continue to see that be a point that we look at both, from our organization standpoint, but also from just an audit standard standpoint, an ongoing consideration and growing consideration.
And you commented on page 1 of the MD&A report, there is a discussion of the net position increasing by 43.5%, and for business type activities, it increased by 3.4 million or 5.2%. So the town is spending money, but we're seeing that investment go to our balance sheet where we're increasing the assets that the town has, not simply spending money on operating expenses, correct?
Correct. I mean, particularly for the governmental activities, you had a large increase in your capital assets, so the investment in that, capital infrastructure throughout the town for that there. So yes, I mean, certainly that was a large impact in the 2025 results.
And in terms of the investment results that we had last year, it did look like the town was very nimble in achieving some attractive investment returns with their cash, and they are restricted to the types of investment they pursue. I didn't know if Mr. Yoon wanted to comment on some of the strategies in managing the cash that the town employs.
Sure. We have an investment portfolio that's made of a fairly fixed safe investments, treasuries, U.S. bonds, CDs. We also have money market funds. Over the last couple of fiscal years, and this fiscal year in particular, there was a lot more yield to be gained in money market funds. We purchase a treasury or a bond or a CD for a number of years, and that rate is locked. Rates increased significantly over the last couple of years, and you can't grab that with that investment. But as those investments matured, we put that money into money market funds. We were getting 4.5% of increases. So we kind of strategically moved out of those positions to a more of a short-term cash investment position that gave us a better yield, and that resulted, of course, in more investment income for the year.
Okay, well, that's what I have.
Other questions for the auditor?
Mayor, I just did want to point out, last time, and Mr. Hume reminded me, last time Mr. Cervini was here was a little bit different scenario. It was October of last year when we were presenting our audit findings to you, and it was the same night as our mass gathering and nuisance discussion. So we don't have quite the same crowd size and quite the same experience, but we appreciate Mr. Cervini coming back. And then the next two items pertain specifically to the audit.
Thank you, Mr. Savini. Item 10 is a resolution to accept the audited Town of Normal financial statements and report on internal controls from the town's auditors, Sikich LLC, for the year ending March 31st, 2025.
Move approval.
Second.
Inadvertently, that document was left out of your packet, but it is on your table, the actual ordinance. You want a minute to look at that? It reflects pretty much what we always do in an audit process.
Yep, actually, it's the resolution.
Resolution.
Yes, resolution accepting the audit.
Did we have a motion for approval?
I did.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, further questions? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That resolution is approved. Item 11 is a resolution to accept the federal compliance audit for the year ending March 31st, 2025.
Move for approval?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
That resolution is also approved. New business, we have a resolution to adopting standards for determining affordable rents for the Community Development Block
Move
Grant
approval.
Program.
Second.
Discussion on this item, Ms.
Mayor, not much to report. I will paraphrase Ms. Tony's report and indicate that the policy we're asking council to adopt is formalizing a practice that we have in the community development area, and Ms. Tony is here if council has any questions.
Questions, or Ms. Lorenz?
What were we doing before?
We were applying this. This was a practice, so we didn't have a formal policy.
Okay, and so we didn't have a formal policy, and why was that?
It wasn't required. It's now required, so.
okay, so
But
this
Ms.
is-
Tony's coming forward.
This is
so.
a new requirement. Perfect.
Am I on? Yes. We only just recently started doing rehab on rental properties. So we have had the practice of checking the leases to make sure they're within those affordable rental rates that are mentioned by HUD. We don't have to accept those. We could come up with our own process. So what we're asking is, in order to be in compliance with the regulation, we need to formally adopt a standard. And I'm recommending that we would adopt HUD standards.
Makes sense.
And then we've continuously published those rates on the website, which we're required to do as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Ms. Smith?
And just to be clear, these standards for the affordable rents are for properties participating in the CBDG program, and we are not attempting to influence the private market by setting rents in any way.
There's no rent control in this action.
Yes, just wanted to go on record.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That resolution is approved. Item 13 is an ordinance amending Chapter 17 of the Town Code having to do with the number of animals.
Move approval?
Second.
Discussion on this item. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll just make a couple of comments. This is an item that was presented to us, as one of the public commenters indicated. Ms. Tabor had emailed council and administration a number of months ago and asked us to consider modification in our current limitation of the number of animals that people can have as pets. And so staff did take a look. We did check some of our peer communities to find out how we compared, and it turned out that many other communities already allowed 3 pets, and we were not the norm in that. So we evaluated that, and we're just coming with a recommendation to modify it from 2 to 3 of the species. And any specific questions regarding the ordinance, I would defer to Mr. Cursagrosa. On situations, as we explained in the council report, in terms of animal behavior, dangerous dogs and the like, those would be covered under a different section of the municipal code. So with that, we will react to any questions council may have.
A lot of hands went up over here, so I'm going to start with Mr. Byers and just work
I'll
this
have
way.
something too.
Thanks. I think I may have had one question answered, but yeah, I think my first question was, I understand in reading through the packet that seems like a driver is, we just kind of feel this is, the current ordinance is out of date, and that there's more residents of the community with 3 pets for perhaps reasons of different generations living together, other reasons. I mean, any other just drivers in the policy change? Just curious.
Not significant drivers, just comparability with some other communities. Bloomington's at 3. You could live across the street in Normal and have 2. We're just recommending consistency.
Okay, yeah, and that was my second question, so you may have already addressed it. What did we pull the comps and kind of what came out of that? So it sounds like Bloomington's 3 and, okay, well, appreciate it.
Ms. Lawrence?
Okay, I'm just going to go in order. So I appreciate the young commenters' remarks. I really do. Very brave of you to come up and speak to the group. We've had two, sometimes fondly referred to as the Noah Arks rule, Noah's Ark, move a kind. This has largely been a complaint-driven ordinance. So I think probably all of us up here from maybe visiting people in neighborhoods can attest to the fact that there are more than just a few houses that do have more than two of a kind. I've seen 3 dogs, 3 cats, probably 3 gerbils. So this is, like I said, complaint-driven. And I'm not sure that number really is the crucial factor here. I think, and this was brought to our attention in a email that we all received from a resident, that so here's my question. What are we doing, whether it's 2 or 3, to allow some anonymous mitigation should there be excessive barking, whether it's 2 dogs or 3 dogs? What can residents do in those situations? Maybe other parts of the code refer to some nuisance or noise. I'd like to hear more about what can residents expect, whether it's 2 or 3, to have as their support from the town.
Sure. So I think what I'm hearing is, what can a resident do if someone has a misbehaving animal, essentially, whether it's 2 or 3 of them?
Right.
We regularly take those complaints. They go through our code enforcement department most often. Sometimes they're reported to police, but generally it's the code enforcement officers that are hearing those complaints, and they'll investigate it. If they find that an animal has violated any number of the behavior provisions, we can essentially cite them for that and bring them into administrative adjudication and fine them for the behavior or the misbehavior.
So what are some of the behaviors?
It could be a loud dog, loud animals. Our ordinance talks about loud animals. It's generally dogs. Sanitation related, not keeping an animal as you should in healthy conditions. Running off leash is a common one if a dog escapes or is just not being held on a leash. And then dog bites are another common issue.
So would excessive barking rise to one of those nuisance?
Yes, it can, depending on the circumstances. But
because I did personally hear from another resident that spoke about this very issue and feeling like she doesn't have any recourse. So perhaps through all of this, better education for neighbors to know what they can do in the case of 2 barking dogs, that they can't sit outside their house because the dogs bark.
Sure. Yeah, if I were presented with that, I would encourage them to reach out to our code enforcement department and notify them of the issues and give them as much information as they can.
Yeah, I'll defer at this point, maybe come back and say a few more things. I'm not quite sure I understand the driver behind this. It's been working the way it is on a complaint-driven basis, whether it's 2 or 3. I think the issue is more around what to do when there is misbehaving animals. So I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Preston?
Thanks. I'll pick up on something that Mr. Corsagrosso was kind of going through on the complaints that we've received in this regard in the past. And so as I've thought about this, and as you reiterated in your comments tonight, be it nuisance from noise, be it being off a leash, sanitary conditions, and the like, none of those are specific issues that would be more applicable with 3 dogs as they would be with 2. For instance, you could have 1 dog that is aggressive and isn't often kept on a leash and runs around and bites people in the neighborhood, and that's the only dog in that family, right? That's enough to file a complaint. You could have 1 or 2 dogs barking all night outside, disturbing neighbors, whatever. That's not something that's inherently an issue with 3 dogs, but wouldn't be as much with 2. If 2 is more than enough, 1 is enough to have that kind of issue. Same with the sanitary conditions and the like. Now, I do hear the concern from one of our other public commenters about safety, specifically on the trail and just walking and the management of dogs. Again, as I see that, I mean, yes, 3 is more than 2 on leashes, obviously, but you can have, as I think was articulated, you can have issues with specific dogs and specific dog owners that just have 1 dog, and don't, haven't well trained their dog, don't keep them behaviorally, publicly appropriate, whatever, and be out on the trail. That can be an issue with 1 dog, let alone 3. So the issues that we have had in this regard, I don't see a specific tie that it would be like, other than the fact that it'd simply be an additional dog, but it's still an issue at 2 dogs or even at 1 in most of the complaints we've gotten. Now, that said, I would like to commend, I believe, Miss Tabor, who came and spoke with us at public comment tonight, and I did pull up the email that you had sent us back in June. And if you don't mind, I would like to paraphrase just a part of it that I found impressive, was that our young public commenter in her email to us talked about how she made a presentation and gave it to her parents, outlining the reason for them to get another dog. They have 2. It sounded like, at least at the time of this email, and like put in a lot of effort, put in a lot of thought, made the case, and similarly to her parents, and then similarly came and did that tonight. And I think that being willing to do that, I think putting forth the initiative and the perspective and, putting yourself out there and going for what you want and making the case, I love it. And I hope that an offput of that effort tonight is the sensible policy that is before us being approved to change from 2 to 3. So kudos to you, and hopefully this thing passes. I'm certainly in support.
Ms. Smith?
Well, I don't want to neglect our first speaker, Mr. Kerber, and thank you for your service. And I understand if you had a fear of dogs, how it can be very, very troubling to encounter an aggressive dog on the trail. Do we have regulations about dog behavior on the trail?
Not specific to the trail. Our dangerous dog ordinance does talk about dog bites, of course, but there is behavior that doesn't arise to an actual bite that could be cited. So an aggressive dog could be cited under our dangerous dog ordinance.
So that applies anywhere in
Yes.
normal that you might encounter it. And our code enforcement is which department of the town?
That is inspections, sorry.
Inspections. Personally, I've had to ban my dogs from the trail because they do not play well with others. And then even despite that, the regular route in the neighborhood, we try to time it when there aren't other dogs typically walking, because they are obedient school dropouts, both of them. I think in looking at the feasibility of expanding it from 2 dogs to 3, we're not saying anything about the weight, and little purse dogs are certainly, having 3 of those don't pose the same kind of complications that owning large breeds would. And I do feel for situations where in a household more than one person wants to have a pet, and dogs are just wonderful creatures. They don't criticize you. They don't complain about the stuff you do or don't do to them, and I can appreciate a desire to add one to the household and diminish the shelter population. So I'm in favor of this, but I do encourage you to reach out to code enforcement the next time you have that, and get in the habit of the younger generation and just snapping a picture of the individual who behaves in such an abhorrent manner on the trail. It's uncalled for.
Mr. Byers?
I did have one finishing question, just thinking of our public comment earlier. I think it's probably a question for staff. is there existing code or I guess recourse for individuals that would be on, let's say, Constitution Trail without a leash, walking their dog without a leash? I assume there's existing code and recourse.
Yeah, that would be considered running at large. It's any time that you're off your own property with an animal and it's not physically restrained. So if you were on the trail with a dog without a leash, that would be in violation of that.
Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. Great discussion. I think I appreciate both speakers coming and addressing us tonight, obviously from different perspectives. And as a dog owner, the perspective I experience out in the public is generally of how you feel about a dog, and so attempting to remove that from this discussion, our own personal opinions about it. Having gone through a recent election cycle and knocking on a bunch of doors, and in the last 12 months, I've had 3 people reach out to me about dogs, and I'm going to concur with whoever made the statement that I think the largest concern I hear out in the community about the number of pets isn't, or about pets in general, isn't about number. I've had 3 people reach out to me about being attacked, or a friend attacked, or neighborhood dog attacked somebody, and so it's been all about the aggressiveness of dogs rather than the number of them being around. Despite this being in the press, I still haven't heard anything other than our public commenters about number of dogs, other than a couple of friends saying, yeah, I want more dogs. I try to discount my friends when I make deliberations up here, but so I just wanted to lend that mostly what I hear about or am contacting about is aggressive dogs. Thank you.
Further discussion? Ms. Lorenz?
So I've got 2 follow-up questions. One is, again, trying to get at the driver of this increase. How much have we heard from, other than our speaker tonight, how much have we had inquiries about this, changing this, increasing it?
Very few, honestly. I'm aware of a number of people who currently own 3 pets.
Yep.
So I'm aware of the code violation, but in terms of inquiry and people in my neighborhood and friends' neighborhoods and things like that. So I can't give you a specific number of complaints or calls. Maybe Mr. Corsagrosa has some better experience of that. And I'll turn it over to you if you do. But otherwise, the driver of this conversation, and as always, if council has a different opinion, that's fine. That's why we've laid it out here for discussion. But the driver of this was an inquiry on whether or not the town would consider a change, and then again, an exploration of what do some other of our, what I'm going to call peer communities, have as a requirement. So in theory, somebody in Bloomington that has 3 dogs legally moves into normal, and their 3 dogs suddenly make them illegal. Or 3 cats. I mean, we're talking a lot about dogs. So that's the driver of the conversation. Do we have a reason to justify 2? And I don't, other than it's just been historical.
Yeah, and I can just add a little more anecdotal evidence. The last situation you mentioned, Ms. Reese, is one that I've commonly heard maybe a handful of times, somebody moving from Bloomington to Normal and then finding out either after they've moved or before they make the move that they got one too many animals and they'll be in violation. Beyond that, I don't really keep track of inquiries, but there have been a handful over the years of people either moving to town or considering an additional animal that ask ahead of time, or if I'm getting complaints from inspections or code enforcement, it's often they've been, a neighbor has notified and they go there and they find 3 animals and then write them the ticket in that case.
So what I find kind of interesting is I haven't heard really any either. But yet, when this got placed on tonight's agenda, we all got one email, I know, in common. I was reached out to by another resident, and we had a speaker here tonight. I think the common theme among all of them is wanting to keep a tighter rein on the behavior of animals, particularly dogs, that can be aggressive or hard to handle. And so for that reason, I think we're kind of missing the mark on relooking at this ordinance as just simply an increase in number. I think we're missing an opportunity to speak about weight. That was an interesting point I hadn't thought of, Ms. Smith. A bit more about behavior and nuisance and expected behaviors on trail, and just to make sure that there is harmony in the neighborhoods. I think you can be an owner of 3 very small dogs, even 3 large dogs, and not have any complaints. You can be an owner of 1 dog, large or small, and have complaints. So I just feel like this is not solving the problem. And the problem really is not about the number as it is about behavior and potential for not only disharmony, but also potential lack of safety or threat to safety. So for that reason, I'd like us to go back to the drawing board and rethink this. And I do love dogs.
So the issue tonight was not about dog behavior or cat behavior. If you've got a frisky cat who attacks people.
Terrible.
I've had one of those. It was about the number of animals. And we're not here to discuss dog behavior or aggressive behaviors. If we want to introduce that, I think staff has indicated that they address the issue and doing that issue. I'm not sure what council can do other than increase fine rates or something like that. And
Those
that
are all
won't
good
solve the problem,
options.
in my opinion. That will not solve the problem, in my opinion. I have a friend who is in the business of dealing with dogs' excessive barking and aggressiveness. And after 2 years, he says it's never the dog, it's the owner. So
Nicely.
I don't think we're going to solve anything by taking this any further. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
No.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Roberge,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That ordinance amendment is approved. Item 14, it's been a long time since we've had item 14. Presentation of the fiscal year 2024-25 financial trend and condition report. A report I always look forward to.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hune has joined us. This actually is a night that we always look forward to. It is a great opportunity not only to hear from the auditor on the evaluation and the annual comprehensive financial reports that have been completed, but now we get a chance to look at the trends, the 10-year history, talk about how our overall financial picture looks, and I believe council equally gets excited about this night and the information that Mr. Hune shares. So I do want to point out Mr. Hune obviously is the finance director, but he does have a staff in the finance department that's stellar. And without his great staff, we wouldn't be able to review this information. So thank you to Mr. Hune and the whole finance department for putting this together. And after his presentation, we'll, I'm sure, answer all sorts of questions that council may have, but it's good information. You did receive separately the actual complete financial trend and condition report. And then also at your table this evening are copies of the PowerPoint slides. We're not going to show every page of the report up on the screen, but some real important highlights for you. So, Mr. Hune, take it away.
Thank you. Yes, it's always a good evening for us to get here to this point in time. We get the audit completed, we get the trend report redone, and then we move into the budget process. So it's a very timely thing for us to be presenting this information for you tonight, and we enjoy doing it. Very similar to prior years. Of course, the trend report, we look at 35 different indicators over 6 different categories, as you can see on the screen there. We rate them as positive, negative, or unclassified. Unclassified simply means that it's just there for information only. We're not providing a judgment on it per se in terms of positive or negative in terms of a trend.
Mr. Hune, I'm going to ask you to speak closer to the microphone so we can all hear you a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of year-to-year changes, very stable this year. You can see 24 positive still, 3 negative, and 8 unclassified. We did have a couple of switch from negative to positive and 1 positive negative. They kind of washed each other out, so we're still the same overall scoring. We have a number
we'll
of...
call that financial whack-a-mole.
Right. It all washes out. These first indicators are we call community indicators, and they cover a variety of things that are more interested in terms of not necessarily accounting, finance, but more accounting, more community. You can see there we have a number of them, 7 in total we look at. A couple are still negative, mostly positive. I'm going to review through most of these just right now. Assessed value, this is a real good slide to talk about to kick it off. You can see the extraordinary growth that we've seen in the last couple of years. This slide, of course, lists the town's total assessed value from 2015 to 2024. Fairly small increases over a number of years, but started in 21, 22, 23, 24, we had significant increases. This is obviously a wonderful problem to have in terms of growth of the tax base, wealth to the community. It does have certain complexities and challenges, of course, with it, but you can see this year, 17.1% increase from 20 to 24. That's over $200 million of assessed value being added to the rolls. You can see the breakdown there between residential, industrial, and commercial. Residential increase by 102 million, industrial 58 million, almost 60 million. That's largely expansions that we've seen in Rivian, and of course, commercial is also moving up. One note to take from this slide too, in addition to just the extraordinary growth that we're seeing as a community, is the shift in the tax base. If you look back at 2015 to about really now, about 68% of the tax base was residential. So as that changes to more industrial commercial, more of the tax burden is shifted away from those households to those entities. So that's a good thing to see that tax burden lessen to the extent it can with this change in the mix of the assessed value between those different parties. I don't want to walk away from this this assessed value without just more visual to it. This just shows the change in assessed value from 2017 to 2024. Just to give you a sense of the magnitude there, we're looking at about 1 or 2% increases over the last few years, and that's fairly standard and good to see. A certain amount of inflationary growth is expected. In 22, 7.2, in 2023, 20 point, and then 17.1% for this year. Just alone in 2023, the almost $200 million of assessed value is more than all the years presented prior to that in terms of growth. So again, a remarkable time to have this community experience that kind of growth. And of course, this last slide just kind of indicates again the same story, a fairly flat to small increase in growth in all those components: residential, farm, commercial, industrial, and railroads. But you can see in those last few years, significant growth in residential, significant growth in commercial, and significant growth in industrial. Again, Rivian, commercial, and housing. Housing, of course, is part of the demand for the workforce is increased, and supply and demand issues are causing that growth there. But it does again increase the tax base and wealth of the community.
Mr. Hune, can you go back to the previous slide real quickly? And
this one or
one more? Yeah. This represents year-to-year growth in EAV, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Yep. In terms of construction permits, our next indicator, this one can be up and down over the years. It's switched from negative to positive a number of times. It is down this year in 24. Not necessarily to be unexpected in terms of what we see in the economy. Inflation, high interest rate costs. We're not going to, buy or build homes during that period of time. Consumer spending obviously retreats during uncertainty in terms of economic development or the economy. So we kind of expected a down year in 24, and we did have that. Now, this is a calendar year analysis, and 2024 was a while ago, 9 months almost. So we did look at current year to date for 25 to see kind of what's going on with these year to date. So through early September, early this month, commercial is still slightly below all of last year, but residential is already above everything we had last year through September or through basically August. So we're seeing a pickup there. I think folks are generally starting to recognize that interest rates are kind of where they're going to be. The demand for housing is there, and renovations also, remodels are increased. So we are seeing a pickup in both single family and remodels, significantly remodels for 25. So we're hopeful that this indicator might return to a positive position next year in terms of what we're seeing in the current year. Housing prices, again, this is very indicative of what we've already seen in the assessed value growth and residential growth for EAV. New homes up almost 8% in terms of pricing, existing homes up 6.4%, and just since 2019 to forward, about a combination of 10% average growth in both those areas. Again, that's quite extraordinary to see happen in the community, to have that kind of growth in terms of housing prices. Certainly, it adds wealth to the community and to the homeowner, but it also makes some challenges in terms of affordable housing that we're all aware of. Two other indicators in the community in terms of Amtrak and airport usage. Amtrak, as you can see, continues to have solid growth, post-pandemic. In fact, we're almost back to pre-pandemic era. So like 14% growth, 14% prior year, almost 100% 22. So we are seeing a lot of good growth there, and that's good to see. Airport usage is still struggling a bit. In talking to the folks at the airport, they've indicated that leisure travel is up year over year. It has grown since the pandemic. Business travel is still a little soft right now in terms of recovering. But they did note that we don't track this in our analysis. Air freight, air cargo has almost doubled in terms of tonnage in 24, and that's a reflection of manufacturing needs to bring in equipment and product and so forth. So I think, we can view this as, we ranked it as negative for airports because it's still kind of dropping. It was a slight drop. It makes sense what's happening with business travel still not recovering fully. And the air cargo is kind of a nice tipping point for the economy to see we're seeing a lot of growth in terms of manufacturing. Unemployment rate, again, still very strong. All the jurisdictions that we track, all kind of downstate communities, all improved from 24 to 25. In fact, anything 3 to 4% is remarkable unemployment rate. The town used to kind of keep the number one position. Now we kind of share it with Urbana and Champaign as of the 25. Even Decatur, who's still at 6%, which is, on the high end, almost brought a whole point down from last year. So we are seeing some good return there and some good news there. I did check the preliminary numbers for July because this is as of 3/31, our year-end close. July preliminary numbers from the state show pretty stable in terms of those indicators still, or those rates still. Workforce, this is another great story in terms of what's happening in the community, and this is driving a lot of the AV growth, the housing growth. Jobs are where the economy is driven by. We're continuing to see a fourth year of positive growth in terms of workforce, and that is very helpful for many reasons in terms of local economy. Moving on to revenue, kind of getting away from community indicators now. All very positive with the exception of utility tax, which was negative last year. That one's kind of returned to its old ways of kind of a slow decline, per se. The lights are dimming, as they say. So looking at this, this is our mix of revenue, of course, $156 million in total revenue for the town. This chart just kind of displays the components of that revenue and the revenue mix. The first chart here for our analysis and our indicators is property tax rate. This chart shows the rate distribution of your property tax bill for a resident and normal. It shows you all the taxing jurisdictions. You can see largely, and the council is well aware of this, at Unit 5, school systems are the main generator of property tax revenue and property tax rates. The town, we're about 9.8% now. We have this rate as positive. Simply because the municipalities generally keep a small piece of the total property tax pie that you pay, and our piece has stayed stable in proportion to the other pieces of the pie, but actually it's gotten a little smaller over time. So we like to be even at 10 to 11 to 9%, and right now we're just below 10% with the last levy that was approved by council in 24. Some of that is a function of the assessed value growth, which is helpful, but also a lot of it's a function of just maintaining some diligence in terms of the fiscal control of the property tax rate and how we manage that. More on property tax, of course, the town continues to maintain its kind of first position in terms of a direct property tax rate that we use to fund our direct core obligations. We show all of our peers on this chart, from Normal to Bloomington to Galesburg and Decatur. This is the direct rate that funds basically the basic core government. We exclude library rates to get the best comparison, and we also include cities and towns that maintain a park district, because Galesburg and Bloomington and Normal have parks that we maintain through our own resources and not a park district, so that helps us kind of do a good comparison. We're pleased with where we're at in terms of being the lowest in terms of property tax for the general fund and for core services compared to our counterparts. This chart here is an expanded version of that. This shows the property tax rate for all the jurisdictions that tax in Normal. You can see them there on the slide, and we're in second place, as they say, to Bloomington, so we're very close to that. We like to keep in that group versus the other groups who are a bit higher in terms of the property tax rates. So great position to be in for our unique rate for direct services, and then as a community-wide, very reasonable in terms of our comparison to other jurisdictions. Sales tax, this is kind of an interesting slide this year, and this is our main revenue source for general fund, as the council is well aware. We have, as a recap, we have, or some information background, we have a 1% tax rate for sales tax and a 2.5 local tax rate. You can see in from 24 to 25, we had a drop in state sales tax rate, the 1% by 8.4%, and then local came in around 2.6. That's a bit unusual. Usually those two tax rates and the revenue from them kind of stay in line with each other as they go forward. Occasionally we do have a divergence where we have one going in an obviously different direction. This is the first time in many years we've had it such an extreme case. It's hard to say what's caused that. We can speculate with some good education. If I had access to the state sales tax database, I could probably figure it out pretty quickly. But in terms of what we're thinking, it's important to know that the 1%, what is taxed at the 1% and the 2.5 are somewhat different. The 1% is the 2.5% local is not applied to the purchase of a titled item like a car or a truck or a motorcycle or a boat, large dollar purchases. Also, groceries and medical drugs are attached to 2.5%. So what we think has occurred is that the uncertainty associated with the last couple of fiscal years of spending, people aren't buying bigger items. Cost of money is fairly high, so they're passing on a boat or a car or RV and so forth, and that would impact where we'd see a drop in the state rate of revenue, not necessarily a drop in the local rate. Again, speculation there. It's a pretty big change. We're still looking at it in terms of state discussions to find out kind of what happened, but typically we see those revenues kind of follow each other. Going forward into the current fiscal year, we're seeing both continue to recover quite a bit. The numbers are coming in, and we're feeling comfortable about that. So we're seeing some recovery. I don't think we'll see a negative this year, but we're looking at some recovery in both those. And actually, local didn't do too bad at 2.6%. That's certainly nothing to be ashamed of in terms of revenue growth. State income tax, again, a strong point for the year. I think this is a result of just a resilient labor market across the country, and certainly in our community in the state. We did see an increase in income tax, which helped offset some of the loss that we had from the 1%, 8.4 decrease in state sales tax. It's hard to say what's going to happen in the future for that. Looking at it currently, it's staying pretty steady. We watch these numbers monthly, of course, and we'll watch them, and we'll do a strong evaluation as part of the budget process this year. But for now, we closed the year with an up in income tax, and it appears to be stable through the current numbers this year. Utility tax, I did allude towards the fact that it's kind of returned to its old ways. You can see in this chart that over a number of years, 2016 to 2021, it kind of had a slow decrease. A lot drives that. We did see a bump up in 22 and 23 that was mostly related to kind of new households and new activity, but now we kind of returned to that. It's weather dependent sometimes with cold winters and hot summers. Also, there's going to be downward pressure on this particular revenue because of cable TV and telephone, cell phones taking over and streaming services and so forth. So it's a source that's going to have some downward pressure, and it's also a source that's going to be unpredictable because of weather, and we monitor it going forward. We typically assume it's going to be flat every year in hopes that it does perform better than that. But this last year it was actually a little bit below. Food and beverage tax, again, always a solid performer in terms of revenue growth. A lot of good offerings in the community. People obviously still enjoy to eat out, and we're still seeing good revenue growth there through 25 and also through the current period. Moving on to expenses, most of these are unclassified except for the personnel cost total expenditures. We've got that as positive. In terms of the overall mix of expenditures, $150 million. This is again town-wide. This includes water and sewer and stormwater, and then also general fund and so forth. You can see that the lion's share of the cost is public safety, capital outlay, utility costs, culture and recreation. So what kind you expect to see in terms of a mix of expenditures for the town? This chart kind of breaks out the overall spending by general fund department. We don't really give it a rating per se. You can see that we have had an increase in expenses there. A lot of that is not necessarily some of it's one time. By way of example, for the 25, we had about $1 million more in extra pension payments that we made this year that we may or may not repeat in the future. So that was over and above our regular contribution of 100% funding by 2040. That increased our expenses. We did have some additional costs associated with vehicles and equipment that was in terms of inflation of those costs, and then also some salary and benefit increases, mostly in public safety. General fund personnel costs as a function of total general fund expenditures. We track this to give us a sense of where we stand in terms of our total labor cost to our total cost. There's not necessarily a magic number to be hitting. We have tracked it for a number of years, and we've been as high as 70, as lower at 64. We have this rate as positive because we feel it's giving us a good sense that even though we are growing as a community, we're keeping our personnel costs relatively under control, not really, under control compared to our other expenditures. If we saw a large jump here, that would be something we want to investigate and look at, but for the most part, we're holding the line with our personnel costs as composed to our total expenditure costs. Debt, this is a great story and one that council is very familiar with. A couple of slides to show you here. It's all positive news in terms of our debt position. The overlapping debt, this is comparing the debt of all the taxing jurisdictions within the town compared to the overall assessed value for the entire town. You can see that's been dropping off. Looking back historically, this is a combination of two things, really. It's decreasing debt for all taxing jurisdictions over the number of years, and also an increase in assessed value. So we're getting a smaller number. So the wealth of the community is increasing in terms of EAV, and the overall debt is decreasing in terms of total debt. So it gives us a nice sense of the overlapping debt as a percent of assessed value is smaller, which is a good position to be in. In just the town alone, the total outstanding debt, of course, has been sloping down. This is the total outstanding debt.
Hune,
Sure.
you want to move your slide?
Oh, I'm sorry. I moved it here, but didn't move it down. Thank you. So this chart shows that the town's direct debt outstanding. The raw numbers you can see there, and we continue to be a downward sloping debt position. That won't always be the case. We are going to issue debt someday. It's going to happen. It's part of how we fund major projects and major initiatives to continue to be viable. But for now, we are continuing to see a downward sloping debt, which is a good place to be. And then this last chart just kind of does the same thing the first one did, but it just looks at the town's debt compared to the town's assessed value. And again, the same sloping curve is there. Our debt has been decreasing for a number of years. Our assessed value has been increasing, so our percent there has been decreasing. In terms of balance sheet items, all positive, in terms of where we stand as of the end of the fiscal year in all the funds. I'll go through a few of these. General fund balance, we did have a small drop, a deficit this year. That was planned. If you recall, the adopted budget for 24-25 called for a deficit where we're going to spend down some of our excess reserves. We did do that, not to the extent we thought we would, which is fine, so we had a more favorable position, but we did have a small deficit this year, which was expected, but not nearly as what we expected it to be. We do have some carryover that will move into the new fiscal year to spend, but overall that we landed the fiscal year for general fund in a better position than we expected. In terms of pension funding, another good story to share here. A lot of components go into the pension funding calculation. We rely on our actuaries to give us that information. You can see here both for police and fire, this is our 4th year of increase in pension level funding, which is wonderful to see. We're now in the 60s on both for police and for fire, at 63 for fire. So I think a lot's been going here that's been good. The town council has supported 100% funding by 2040. The town council has supported extra funding for 2 years, and last 3, that's helped bolster things. There's been some retirements that have helped also in terms of that, active members, mortality tables and so forth, but for the most part, we are seeing a nice picture here in terms of growth, and I'm very pleased to report that we're on our way in terms of making headway towards that funding level. IMRF, of course, this is the non fire and police pension fund. This is also in good shape at 90% funded. It's been well funded for a number of years. You know, the 80, 90, even 100% or 106% one year. That helps in many ways. Just as the police and fire pension, the closer we get to 100% funding, the less we need to fund in terms of catch up. This one's already at near 100% funding, so we have to contribute less to IMRF to support that pension fund. By way of example, in what we contribute in the last 5-year budget per year was between 10.5 and 10.25% of payroll goes to IMRF to support that pension fund. Their estimates now are below 10, like 9.8 to 9.3. So we are, as that funding level increases, our contribution need decreases, which also helps our expenses. Water and sewer fund, both in good position as of fiscal year end. Revenue for water fund remained stable, and cash investments were also stable. Same for the sewer fund. Revenue was stable with last year. You do see a bit of a spike up there in cash and investments. So what happened there is, revenue was consistent. We had some surplus this year in operating capital, mostly a timing of capital projects that we push the next fiscal year. So we enjoy an increase in cash when we have some push and timing for capital projects, but that cash will get spent in the out years. It's a long capital process for that, but that's kind of explains some of the bigger increase there in that red bar. Health and dental fund, again, this shows the fund balance over a number of years. 21 was a rough year. 22 was a year we actually had to do some stabilization from the general fund. But since then, things have really turned around in a significant way. Right now, we're above our target in terms of fund balance, which is a good thing. We like to keep a strong fund balance in this fund, even an excess fund balance, to help mitigate any kind of claim activity that might be unexpected for the organization, or to help mitigate increases in insurance rates that we'd like to kind of offset a bit. So we have some flexibility in this fund for the first time in many years. A lot of flexibility in terms of 25 going into the budget process. So I'm pleased with where that fund is at in terms of fiscal position. This last part, so up until this slide, we talked mostly about where we landed the year and kind of our trending. Now we're going to switch more to what the future looks like in terms of outlook, and it gets a little more pessimistic there, obviously, in terms of how we view things. But so general fund, we have a cautious outlook. Vehicle and reserve, we have cautious and negative for contingency funding. Positive for debt management, health and health reserves. Water, we have a negative, and I'm going to talk more about that in a few slides. Capital cautious, and then sewer's in good shape. So that's kind of a quick summary of what I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. So general fund, as you can see here, the projected fund balance and target fund balance were above our target in all years. We are scaling down that fund balance position from 18 estimate to about 16. Again, we're still above our reserve target there, but we are in the process of structurally spending down some of our excess reserves as part of our budget process this last year and the future years. We're getting to budget process pretty soon, so we'll be able to recap this a lot better at our work session. But there are some fairly impactful things we're going to have to program into the budget that are not in there now that will have an impact on this position. So again, you know, we're in great shape right now, and even this picture shows us in good condition. But we are scaling down, and we do have some things to deal with this year they'll be impactful to the budget. So we're going to be mindful of those things. So we do have as a cautious outlook. I don't have charts, graphs for these other three, but I did want to touch on them a little bit. So the cautious outlook for the equipment reserve, that of course is the fund we set aside money annually to pay for major purchases of fire trucks, ambulances, waste fees, car vehicles, police cars, everything. In years 4 and 5 in the current budget, we're below our target. Again, not an emergency. You know, we look pretty far out into the future, and we always deal with it before we get there. But year 4 and 5 are below our target, so it's a cautious outlook. Negative outlook for contingency funds. Of course, the general fund has a fund balance, which is the ultimate contingency fund for the general fund. We also like to put aside some money in the operating budget as a contingency to be available for any department to use in terms of budget need. We have not been able to support that this last budget cycle, simply because we're trying to manage other things. So we're trying to those are below our target for all years and a negative outlook. Hopefully, we can get that back in the budget this year. We'll see. Positive outlook for debt coverage ratios and health and dental fund, no issues there at all. Water fund. So this is, again, the water fund has two funds, an operating fund and a capital fund. We have a target for each of those funds, 20% fund balance for the water fund and a $1.5 million balance all the time in the capital fund. As you can see here, we've got this as negative outlook for the water fund. We're at 30.9% projected for this current fiscal year we're in when we end, and that gets down to 3.4% in the out years. So that's well below 20%. Again, it's a negative outlook. It's not something that we're going to let happen, but we have a 5-year look that says that we have a bit of an issue here that we need to consider. In this budget for both water and sewer is a council-approved 2% rate increase through April of 28. That may not be enough to support where we stand on some of these projects. You can see in terms of water capital, we continue to do a great deal of capital work, but we are getting a little skinny on where we end our balances there in terms of what we want to have, a $1.5 million fund balance. So there's a dynamic here that we'll talk more about as far as the budget process this year, the needed rate, if we want to do cuts to capital, if we want to do a balance of both those. But we'll be talking to you a lot more about this in the coming months as part of the budget process. Sewer is actually not in bad shape given the current budget we have in our 5-year budget. Again, our outlook for sewer is positive for the operating and for the capital fund. We're well above our target for sewer fund balance in all years, although we are coming down, to almost 25% our target in year 5. And then our capital fund is well above our $500,000 minimum. Again, we're going to redo all these numbers as part of the budget process, but right now the outlook looks pretty positive for the sewer fund. However, there's going to be some more costs for capital projects that are going to be programmed into the budget in the next 5 years for sewer that are going to be impactful, that are not currently in the budget now. So that will impact this outlook. But right now, based on the current budget structure and the planned spending, it's positive. But again, I'm going to tell you if we do have more coming that we need to program in, and that might impact how these look going forward. Again, a lot more to talk about when we get to the budget process in the next couple months with you. In terms of fiscal position and budget status, we closed the year better than expected. The revenues were largely favorable or stable, except for state sales tax, which was a decrease. We're starting to see that kind of turn around now. Expenses were below budget across the board. We did have a deficit position that was planned, but it wasn't as significant as we expected. And we go into the budget with strong reserves at year end. In terms of current fiscal year, 25-26, revenues are tracking better than expected a little bit. some better than others, and then expenses tracking at or below budget. So we're having a pretty stable fiscal year currently. Sorry, I'm looking at mine and not showing you guys this. And then 26-27 budget process, we've started that process. Again, we've entered the budget process in a good position. Revenues seem to be recovering and are more favorable than we were experiencing in 24-25, i.e. state sales tax. There are new items to propose to the budget that are going to be impactful that we need to program, which has some uncertainty, and we wouldn't mind trying to restore some of the cuts we made last year to capital to the extent we can, and then reestablish some contingency dollars and vehicle equipment reserves in those out years. Again, we'll deal with all this stuff as part of the budget process. We do a long look in the out years to see what's happening. And if we see something that's concerning, we react to it. So this is more cautious. The economy is always uncertain. It's almost every year I have this speech. It's uncertain, and labor market's getting a little softer. Inflation seems to be less persistent, but with tariffs and so forth, there's some uncertainty still. But we are starting to see a little bit of a normalizing there. In fact, we'll hear this week if the Feds are going to do a rate cut. In terms of, largely they feel there's going to be a rate cut that will help get the economy it's slowing down a little bit now, and they're witnessing, so we want to kind of get a little more speed up. So that might help the economic picture too for the town and for the nation. A lot of information to go through there. Hopefully it was all meaningful and understandable. But I'm happy to address any questions that the council may have on this presentation.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Yoon. On your presentation, page 8, where you have the construction building permits, when apartments are built, are those categorized as commercial or residential?
It's categorized as a single-family, I want to say duplex, or there's single-family and then single-family apartment complexes. So they're separate.
And so that's its own category then?
No, it's in that category of
residential?
Yes. Yep.
Does it count each unit as a like equivalent of a single family home?
I would have to say it does not account each unit, but I would default to Mr. Clinch on that in terms of how that's reported. I believe it's just one, not like if you have a 200-room apartment complex, there's 200 more added. It's one or two. One apartment counts as one.
It's one building permit.
Right, there you go.
Goes with the project.
Thank you, yes.
And then on the pensions for the fire and police, we did have an actuarial calculation change in the course of the recent history. And there's 2019 to 2020, it went from 61.8% to 55.9% and then 52.3%. Do you recall what year the actuaries modified their assessment of the funding and then said, because of this change in our calculations, everybody had to make more contributions?
Yes. If memory serves, we did some pretty significant changes to our mortality table updates in those years, and we did over a 2-year period to help soften the blow. But that required a fairly strong decrease in the pension funding level when we introduced the mortality table increase.
Does it look like it might have been around 2020, 2021?
I believe it was in 20 and 21.
Okay, that's consistent with the impact on that.
And also, I'll also add in a couple of those years, we just did 90% funding versus 100% funding, but we returned to 100% funding since then.
And then on page 37 with the health and dental insurance fund, you're showing in 2022 where the town provided a subsidy to stabilize the fund position. Those dollars transferred over from the town above and beyond the typical funding for that health and dental insurance fund. Is there a consideration of possibly diminishing our contribution this year to recover some of that to our regular balances, or just leave it in there?
I think that is an option to essentially return the money back to the general fund, and also water and sewer contributed to that. it's debatable. My recommendation would be at this point to leave the funding where it's at. As I look at the city manager Reese to make sure that she's agreed.
Yes, I agree. One of the issues with our health and dental insurance fund is we are a self-funded government entity. Our plan is still moderate in size, so we can have good years and we can have bad years in terms of claim activity, which can significantly, unexpectedly change our fund balance. If we felt that our fund balance in the health and dental fund was a reasonable level or maybe even too high, alternative approach would be to take that into consideration when we set our rate structure for the upcoming year, to maybe reduce our rates a little bit so we're putting less into the fund moving forward. I'd rather recommend something like that than to take money out of the fund.
But we have had a string of retirements of older employees that might be positively impacting our health.
Only if those individuals are in Medicare.
Okay.
Otherwise, they remain in our plan. The most impactful expense in terms of our claims tend to be prescription drugs and the cost of some very expensive medications on some very serious conditions.
Thank you.
Further questions? Ms. Lorenz?
I just had a couple of points of clarification. One was on both the police and fire pension percentage that were funded. I think our auditor spoke of a couple of different numbers. There may be a good reason why that was. I think it was more like in the 55, and
Sure.
these are showing 60 and 63.
Yep, no, good question, and it's a fairly complex answer, so I'll do my best to explain it. It's been a while since I've kind of talked through that. So we receive an actuarial report that uses the assumptions that best tie to our local population, our retirements, our interest rate evaluations, a smoothing of our assets, and they give us a number that we always have used as the actual funding for the pension fund. A number of years ago, GASB came out with a GASB saying, you know what, we want to get everyone on the same page. And they use a very generic vanilla assumption formula for that. That's fine, and it does cause sometimes some conflict. They say, well, it says this in this actual report, but this one says this. The assumptions that are used in that analysis are very generic and don't necessarily agree to what we would have for our local experience.
Okay.
So it gives a good cross value of every city and town across the U.S. use the same assumptions, but it's not necessarily meaningful for our tax levy calculation and our real funding level. Okay. So basically the answer is they're both correct.
Yeah, I figured.
But the one we report to you as part of the tax levy is more correct in the fact that it addresses exactly our experience as a population for a pension fund.
Okay, good. Also, health and dental. That is quite an increase of position in the fund balance. 23, 24, 24 to 25. Maybe this has already been asked and answered, but are we going to just ride that wave because we are self-insured and it could drop off in an instant? Already answered that, I guess.
No, I don't know that we've answered that. I think based on, we'll know more in a couple weeks, honestly. We'll be coming to council in the month of October with our annual renewal of our group insurance program. And I believe the Human Resources Department and our Employee Insurance Committee meets with our consultant this week to talk about what does the next year of our employee insurance fund look like. So we'll know more soon.
Okay.
My guess is there will be probably a strong chance that we might be able to have a very small or very minimal insurance premium adjustment. As the employer, we pick up a greater cost of that premium than employees do. So that's generally where we can work through the numbers and plan out a fund balance. Looking at based on the premiums and the level of monthly premiums and how much the employer has to pay into the fund to cover claims, that's where we can usually figure out that formula of what makes sense for the next 12 months or so.
Okay.
Right. And I will share also, it's a large, we've seen the fund balance grow significantly over the last couple of years. I wouldn't say it's an excessive balance right now. We're spending close to $8 or $9 million a year on health cover. So a $3 million fund balance on that kind of expense, it sounds less excessive, when you talk about it that way. So, but City Manager Reese's comments are right on. We have a small employee base. We could have significant claims hit that would be dramatic. So,
The cost of specialty drugs continues to surprise us, and we just don't know what that looks like. So that's where Horton Group, our consultant, comes in and can kind of tell us what they're seeing with their other book of business and the risks on the horizon with drugs that might be coming onto the market, or the benefits of maybe some drugs that might soon have some competition that will help in the cost.
All right. 2 more questions? Am I allowed?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. So on page, I'm not sure what it is. It's of your presentation, general fund operating reserves. You made a comment. We're at about we've been about 16. Now we're at 18%, and then forecasting out about 16.5, 16.6. But have plans to spend that down. You kind of said that rather quickly. What are maybe the top headlines of how you anticipate spending that down?
Well, when we balanced the budget last year, we made several cuts to capital, to assurance fund balance. We didn't want to cut deeply too much until we saw kind of where the economy was going. We have seen it kind of recover. So we did have some spend out of excessive reserves take up some of that slack. We have that plan for the out years continuing. It may or may not be needed, given that strategy, and also it may or may not be needed given the fact that we have some other items coming in the budget this year. So that's the cautious outlook in terms of how we view it. I can't give you specifics on what we used for the spend down and what expenses caused the spend down. We can get that eventually for you, of course, as part of the budget process. But it's basically a balancing of the expenses against that excess reserve.
So probably anticipating more capital projects.
Correct.
Well, in addition, we also have, council has executed redevelopment agreements with particular specific developers that we know we will have an obligation to contribute soon that were not included in the adopted budget because they came along since then. So those things that we have to build into the next budget cycle.
All right. Last question then, about your financial strategies, negative outlook on contingency for all years below target. I thought through property tax levy, we did include $500,000 or $750,000 into the general fund for contingency. Am I not remembering that correctly?
I don't see it as specific for contingency. I think that was just to provide more revenue for core services of the general fund as that flat $500,000.
Okay. Then maybe I'm mixing it up with what about in the last couple budgets, operating budgets? Did we put?
I think your memory is correct. We did have we tried to have $500,000 in the budget each year for contingency, and there was a couple years where we were able to include it for 1 or 2 years and not years 3, 4, and 5 of the budget. This particular year, and you are correct, we did include $500,000 in the property tax levy in support of general fund operations. That was not allocated to any particular expense. It wasn't set aside as contingency. It just supported general fund operations. But as part of our budget cycle for the current year we're in, fiscal year 25-26, council might recall I used the term belt tightening. So we pulled back, we cut certain things, and the contingency line was one of the things that was cut in addition to other general fund expenses.
So in this current year, we don't have contingency?
Correct.
Correct.
And our target is 1% of total expenses, so it's almost $1 million that we'd like to set aside if we could.
Right.
But as City Manager Reese mentioned, that was a belt tightening year, and we didn't want to allocate expenses to an account that might not get used. We felt it'd be more prudent just to eliminate that and use the money for actual expenditures.
When was the last time we had a contingency?
We had a little bit in this last fiscal year, but it's been a while since we've had the target balance. A number of years.
It's been a long time.
Number of years,
but we threw maybe 500 or 750,000 maybe a year ago. Okay, that's what I recall. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. First, thank you and the finance staff for another great report, and congratulations again on the audit awards.
Thank you.
How many years in a row is that?
Well, I think we're like at 35 now, or somewhere in three. I just say 3 decades, and then that's kind of
That covers it. Okay.
over 3 decades.
Yeah, I know it's been going on since before I was here, so.
I think it's something that has to happen every time now, or it'll just be disastrous.
Well, the pressure's
for-
on
yeah,
as the time goes on to make sure you get that, I'm sure. Just a few questions. Kind of going back to the general fund operating reserve, you mentioned that the decrease was not as much as you had planned. Was that principally due to better than expected revenues?
Mostly in expense. We did see, like I said, we saw an increase in state income tax we were expecting, which is helpful. We also saw an increase in investment earnings, which was helpful. So the revenue side was part of the story. It's mostly an expense where we had some savings across all lines of operations. However, and again, when we look at surplus, we ended the year with a minor deficit. But we also have what we refer to as carryover, which are projects that we know we've committed to that we have to do, that just because of timing or other issues didn't get done in the current fiscal year. So that gets rebudgeted next year, and that was $2 million. So some of that deficit you saw here, even with the carryover added, we're still below what we thought we were going to be in terms of deficit.
Okay.
But we do have a carryover that we're going to rebudget for next year. That'll essentially add to the deficit position that we recognize.
So that's an accounting and a timing of expense experience.
Correct. So
rather
some
than-
was real savings. I don't want to say it wasn't. Some
Yeah,
was
yeah,
real
of course.
savings, and some it was savings that we're not going to be able to enjoy forever because we're going to reallocate that next in the current year budget.
Gotcha. Okay. And you can say, I'll get back to you on this one if you don't have it. So we were talking about the benefit of a high funding level in the IMRF pension and decreasing the percentage of contributions of payroll. Do you have some concept of effect size so we up here know what that means in dollars, round dollars? If you don't, that's okay.
It's our contribution to IMRF is about, I'm going to just use round numbers, about, I want to say almost $2 million a year. I wouldn't be able to say for sure what that funding level translates to a certain rate that we're charged and what that would be in terms of the actual contribution from that calculation. But it's basically, instead of 10.5% of our total payroll, it's going to be 9.5% of total payroll. I could calculate it for you, but it's incremental. I'm not going to say it's going to save the world in terms of our finances, but it moves in the right direction.
Everybody, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, I didn't want to put you on the spot.
That would be payroll for non-public safety employees.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I remember it's funny, over a decade of going through these, and I remember when we were talking about how low the sewer fund reserve, it was almost non-existent, and we weren't talking about water so much, and boy, how times changed. Now we're always talking about out years, but the water fund now we're talking about, and the sewer fund is different. Can you share with us a little bit? You mentioned the 2% increase that we have set for a certain number of time. I didn't remember the clock on that one, but so we're talking about capital and operations. So are we saying that the cost of fixing and operating the water system is just outpacing our rate increases? Is that principally why we're looking at
that? I would say it's accurate. We know alone from utility costs and chemical costs far exceed what we enjoyed in that 2% rate increase, and then we're not even talking about the capital costs and other expenses. So the 2% is helpful, and it's coded in the code till April 1st of 2020 is the last one for that.
Okay.
But we'll be discussing that at length with the council as part of the budget process to see what we need to do in terms of making the water fund continue to be in a good position for the out years.
Right. I will add to that as well. It is in terms of the operations side of things, it is very much a concern of the cost of doing business,
Absolutely.
chemicals and the like. We will be coming to council soon with the annual chemical bids, so we'll know more. But the cost of utilities, we pay nearly $1 million a year just on electric costs. So as utility costs go up, that also affects the cost of us doing business. On the capital side of things, which is also a concern, we have a great 10-year history of investing significant dollars into our distribution system and at the plant, so we can make sure that we're able to continue to provide high-quality water. That trend we would like to continue, but even the cost of capital projects has increased significantly. So we're trying to build some reasonable expectations into our capital costs. The alternative is we pull back on that, but we also don't want to kick the can down the road.
Pulled back on the
On
scope of capital investments?
Correct.
Okay, so that was going to be my follow-up is, are we mostly cost of our typical capital investment, or are we planning on expanding capital or reducing capital investments?
Well, ideally, we would hope not to reduce
Right.
because the need never goes down. We have, a distribution network throughout town where we've done a great job of replacing old water mains and investing in new water system improvements. So we would like to continue that process. We don't want to cause someone years down the road to be in a position of having a system that doesn't function well. So,
Absolutely. If you paid attention to our discussions over the years, everybody knows I'm a strong supporter of our water system, and we don't have to look too far. Deferred maintenance on water systems ends up costing some multiplier later down the road, as our friend south of us, City of Bloomington, is experiencing and working on in their budgets right now. That was it. I just want to again say just a general congratulations on a strong performance. I typically ask you a crystal ball question, and you already tackled it with why is the state sales tax dropping, and you gave us kind of your crystal ball on that. But for people watching here and on YouTube, if they do, the finance department does a great job of being conservative in our revenue growth projections, and are pretty strong in their expense expectations for us. And what we're seeing is revenues better than forecast, which is not uncommon here because of conservative you guys in finance project, and because good fiscal management, our expenses are also better. So congratulations on all that work. It helps us up here.
Mr. Preston?
Okay. Three things. One is congratulations and thank you to finance staff. I think that overall, as is common, though circumstances change, and certainly a lot of things change year to year, there's a good story to tell, and you guys do a great job telling it. So thank you and congratulations to your entire team, Andrew, for this. Second, a specific question about, or a reminder, the municipal property tax rate comparison. So looking at the other municipalities in the area, it's slide 16, not that you have to go back to it, but direct municipal rate includes library district rate for those municipalities that have it, excludes, or includes park district, I don't know if I said park or library, excludes library.
Correct.
Do any of the other municipalities listed there not have a library district to where their library rate would be included within their municipal rate?
I don't think so. I think all of them have, well, I don't know exactly the answer to that question. I'm not sure. I know we if we see a library rate in our collection of data, we exclude it from what they have, and most of them do have a library rate.
Okay.
But I can't say that for sure. I would need to check the data.
Yeah, and then my last question, this is why do we exclude library rate? Would that tell a slightly different story, or is it just something that isn't generally
It's something I think we wanted to get, this has been going on for quite a while, and I don't want to say because we've always done it that way, but I think we've always done it that way to get just to the core service of government, and in that definition, we were not necessarily including libraries. We were thinking more police and fire, public works, parks and rec, those operations felt more like the use of property tax in terms of that comparison than a library per se. Although library certainly is a core service to the community. I'm not saying that that's not, but I think our decision years ago, and we've kept it going forward, is focus on that rate that is funding core government services versus, one that's more like a library or so forth.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think that information being included in some form or fashion would be helpful because to people who are paying property tax bills, that library rate is in there, whether it shows up on our form or not. And so having that as comparison, I think would be helpful. Last thing is on police and fire pensions. So we've talked forever since the state passed it on the getting 90%, or in our case, looking at 100% funded by 2040. 2040 is rapidly coming up. And as I look over, again, our police and fire pension funding levels over the last decade, there's, variation of, net 3, but, 10 to 15% accounting like low point to high point, incomparable in fire. Talk to me quickly, I guess, about how we get from 63% fire, 60% police now to in 15 years being at our target of 100 or 90 or wherever we need to be, since 2040 is coming quite quickly in the last decade. If that kind of trend line repeats itself, we will, we'll still be hovering in the 60s.
Sure. A couple things to share there. One, the actual report gives us a path of funding that projects the contributions from now to 2040, and I can see that ramping up in part of that revolt. It is coming pretty quickly. One thing that they also actually shared with us this year is as you start to accumulate resources in the pension fund, that builds on itself much faster. So you start to see a ramp up of funding when you have a fair amount of assets to use. So invested earnings grow faster. So that helps. So their position is, from actual reports they show us, that they show a path getting there. And we're going to have increases in contribution, no doubt about it, from now till the 2040, and then it just drops down to almost nothing after 2041. But according to them, there is a path as long as the actual tables remain the same. Nothing changes in terms of retirement or mortality or investment communities. If we stay on that course, it gets there. It's a theoretical number for sure.
Right. The other thing I'll jump in and add quickly is that it is scary looking at the 10-year history of how it's gone up and down pretty low in terms of funding level. But we also did change the mortality tables that we were using. I hope we don't have to do that frequently. We've only done that once maybe in my career. But so hopefully we won't see that again. And then both police and fire pensions are now part of a statewide consolidated pension system like the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. We hope that we'll start seeing larger growth in investment returns, and that there will be some benefit that the pension funds will see in that.
Yeah, and we've been in those statewide funds for a couple years, right?
Fire has been in about 2 years, police maybe a year.
Yep, the fire was low first, and then police second.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, overall, thanks again for all the work that goes into this, and I feel good generally about the direction and the story that's being told by it. So, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Further? Again, Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very digestible report. It really gives us a good look at how we're doing as a community here. And I think it's written in such a way the general community can look at that and really be able to understand what we're doing here. So thank you for doing a great job.
Our pleasure.
On that. And to your crew. Before taking a motion to adjourn to executive session, do we have concerns? Ms. Smith?
I just want to remind everyone that there is a Veterans Fair plan for the Bloomington Public Library on 10/11 from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is free. Get the word out to any veteran you know so that they'll be able to learn about the resources that are available and be connected to individuals that might help their situation. Thank you.
Thank you. A motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss matters of pending or probable litigation, land acquisition, and personnel.
Move approval.
Second.
One more. Did I miss one?
Just if you could modify that motion, you said pending or probable, it's pending and probable.
Boy.
Spoken like a lawyer. So amended. Motion to adjourn? Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Motion and a second? Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Roberge?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned to executive session.